It was wearing a ranger hat. That's the detail. That breaks me every time I try to sleep. Not the arms, though God knows those arms were wrong, hanging past its knees like dead weight on a marionette. Not even the voice. It was the hat. Whoever, whatever, had been watching us long enough to know what we wore out there in the dark. I'm a backcountry ranger stationed near Mount LeConte, deep in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. That night, the rain was the kind that doesn't fall so much as press, freezing and relentless, soaking through your jacket in under a minute. I was at the station just after 2 a.m. when my radio crackled, and Dave's voice came through the static. Dave, my partner, who was supposed to be running the lower loop, his voice was low, almost swallowed by the interference. Hey man, I need help. I think my leg is broken. I'm off trail near Marker 4. I didn't second guess it. You don't, when it's your partner. Marker 4 is 2 miles into the dense backcountry. Thick hemlock canopy, no sight lines, trail barely wide enough for one person. I grabbed the med kit and moved fast. The rain was hammering the trail into mud soup, and my flashlight beam barely cut 10 feet ahead of me. When I reached the marker, there was nothing. No flashlight sweeping through the trees, no sound of someone calling out. I cupped my hands and yelled into the dark. Dave, where are you at, buddy? Here's the thing I still can't get past. I never should have yelled those exact words. The response came from the trees to my left, maybe 50 yards in, buried in the black between the hemlocks. Over here, my leg, help. It was Dave's voice. Every inflection, every frequency, it was him. But there was nothing underneath it, no pain thinning the edges. No adrenaline, no fear. It sounded the way a voice sounds when someone reads a line they've memorized but never felt. I turned my flashlight toward the trees. The beam found it at the tree line. 7 feet tall, maybe more. I measured it against the hemlocks later, and I still feel sick thinking about the math. The ranger hat sat straight on its head. Its arms hung to mid-thigh. Its face was a pale, unfinished thing, and as the light hit it, it didn't flinch or recoil. It simply stood there, still as something that has never needed to hide. Then it opened its mouth, and it spoke in my voice. Dave! Where are you at, buddy? Not an approximation, not an echo. My voice, the cadence, the casual drop at the end, reproduced the way you'd reproduce a sound file. I ran. 2 miles of flooded trail in the dark, full sprint, medkit bouncing off my hip, not once looking back. When I burst through the station door, Dave was sitting at the desk with a mug of coffee, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. Dude, he said. My radio died 3 hours ago. He'd never made that call. He'd never been near Marker 4. Whatever had learned his voice, whatever had learned mine, had been out there in the dark long enough to study us both. I'd never asked myself what it was doing with that information before that night, because the answer I keep arriving at is the one I can't live with. What a park ranger found near Roaring Fork had no explanation in any field guide, and her dog refused to go near it twice. Buster has tracked lost hikers through 50 miles of backcountry and never once broken stride. He locked up, like his paws had been nailed to the ground. I work search and rescue off the Roaring Fork Motor Nature Trail. That afternoon, I was tracking a hiker who'd wandered off path, male, mid-40s, last seen heading east into the undeveloped brush. Buster had his nose down, and we were making good time through the mud and leaf rot, moving into a wide clearing about a quarter mile off the marked trail. That's when he stopped, tail tucked, a single thin whine, then total silence. I looked up and saw what he was refusing to approach. There was a staircase in the middle of the clearing, 10 wooden steps, freestanding, leading up to nothing but open air. No cabin foundation beneath it, no ruins, no evidence of any structure that had ever surrounded it. The woods around it were caked in the usual October filth, dead leaves plastered to the mud, branches rotting into the soil. But the stairs were immaculate, bone dry, and they were carpeted, white carpet, the kind you'd find in a 1990s suburban split level, thick pile, pristine, not a pine needle on it. I'm a rational person. I stood there running through explanations. Film shoot, art installation, somebody hauling lumber out here as a prank. None of those held up past the first 30 seconds of scrutiny, but I was still building the case for them when I made the mistake of stepping closer. At 10 feet out, the woods went silent. Not gradually. All at once, like a switch thrown. No bird calls, no wind moving through the canopy, no rustle of anything living. My ears registered the absence, the way you register a missing tooth with your tongue, pressing against a gap that shouldn't be there. Then the carpet moved. A boot print pressed itself into the white pile on the top step, deep and deliberate, like something heavy had shifted its full weight forward. Then a second print appeared on the step below it. Then a third. Something I could not see was walking down those stairs directly toward me. I grabbed Buster's collar and ran. He didn't need convincing. We never found the missing hiker. The search was called after 72 hours, and his case is still open in the county records. I transferred sectors within the week and told my supervisor I'd found evidence of a trail erosion hazard, paperwork he never followed up on. I still don't know what those stairs were for. I don't know what was descending them. What I know is that Buster, a dog who has never once in his life refused a command, would not take a single step toward that clearing. Whatever I would have met at the bottom of those stairs, he understood something about it that I didn't. What one ranger encountered on the midnight loop through Cades Cove smiled at her, and the voice that spoke came from somewhere behind her cruiser. Cades Cove at midnight is a particular kind of dark. No streetlights, no ambient glow, just miles of open field pressing up against old tree lines, and the pioneer cabins sitting in the dark like they're waiting for something to come home. I ran the midnight loop in my cruiser 3 times a week. The job was simple: make sure no teenagers had snuck into camp after close, confirm the gates, drive out. 20 minutes, start to finish. I was doing maybe 15 miles an hour on the 1-lane road, windows up against the July heat, when my headlights found 4 people walking in the middle of the asphalt. My first thought was genuine concern. Disoriented tourists locked in after dark happen sometimes. But something registered wrong before I'd even processed what I was looking at. They were wearing heavy winter coats, full length, buttoned up, in the kind of suffocating July heat that makes the air feel thick and wet even at midnight. I rolled down my window and slowed to a stop beside them. "Hey folks, the park is closed. You need a ride to your car." All 4 of them stopped walking at the exact same instant. Not a half second apart, the way people stop when they hear something. Simultaneously, like a single motor cutting off. Then they turned their heads toward me. Not their bodies, just their heads. The smiles were already there. Ear to ear, both corners of each mouth pulled so far back that the skin around their cheeks looked taut and strained, like something was holding the expression open from the inside. Their eyes were fully wide. No squint, no natural relaxation around the lids. 4 sets of eyes that did not blink while I sat there. The one I took to be the father opened his mouth. "We are enjoying the night." The voice did not come from his face. His lips did not move. The sound came from somewhere behind my cruiser, close, maybe 10 feet back, like someone standing just outside my rear bumper had spoken the words while his mouth stayed open and still. I cannot explain that. I have never found a framework that holds it. They began walking backward, all 4 of them, in perfect unison, feet finding the road behind them without looking down, stepping off the asphalt edge and into the tall grass on either side. Still facing me, still smiling. The grass swallowed them from the feet up, and the last thing the headlights held before they disappeared completely was those 4 pairs of unblinking eyes. I rolled the window up, locked every door, and pushed the cruiser to 40 on a 15-mile-an-hour road all the way to the exit gate. I checked my rearview mirror the entire drive out. Every few seconds, compulsively, I checked. I told myself I was watching for them on the road. I know what I was actually afraid of seeing. The cabin one ranger sheltered in during a Smoky's thunderstorm was still standing when he ran out. When he came back, it wasn't there. but the dead patch of ground where it stood was. The smell reached me before I was fully through the door, raw and metallic, somewhere between a butcher's floor drain and old iron left in standing water. I filed it under old building, old decay, and stepped inside out of the lightning. I was 3 days into a solo multi-day trek near the North Carolina border in the section of the Smokies where the terrain gets genuinely hostile. Steep, unmapped, the kind of ground that doesn't appear on standard topographic charts. When the storm came in fast, the lightning was close enough that I could feel the static raising the hairs on my forearms. When I spotted the dilapidated wooden cabin tucked into a hillside through the tree line, I didn't deliberate. I ran for it. The interior was a single room, no furniture, no remnants of human habitation beyond the walls themselves, just packed dirt, moss climbing the lower timber, and the smell sitting heavy in the air. I pressed my back against the rear wall and focused on my breathing while the thunder cracked outside. That's when I noticed the wall was warm. I turned and pressed my palm flat against the timber. Not ambient warm, not wood that had absorbed afternoon sun and was slowly releasing it into 60-degree night air. Warm like skin over muscle. Warm the way a living thing is warm from the inside. And it was moving, a vibration, rhythmic and slow, transferring from the timber into my palm. Thump, thump, a pause, thump, thump. I stepped back and looked at the floor. In the beam of my flashlight, the floorboards were rising and falling in a slow, even cycle, expanding, contracting. The whole structure drawing breath around me like a lung. The doorway was changing shape. The gap I'd walked through, I can still see it narrowing as I turned, the vertical timbers on either side flexing inward, the opening shrinking, like a mouth deciding to close. There was no sound of wood under stress, no creak or groan. Just the slow, muscular compression of something that had decided I wasn't leaving. I threw myself at the gap. My shoulders scraped the timber hard on both sides. I have the scars. And I hit the mud outside and didn't stop running until I couldn't see the hillside anymore. A week later, I GPS coordinated back to that exact location with another ranger. There was no cabin. The hillside was bare. Where the structure should have been, there was a patch of ground roughly the size of the floor plan, and nothing grew there. No moss, no ground cover, not a single weed pushing through. Just dead soil in a perfect rectangle, like the earth beneath it had been used up entirely. My colleague said it looked like a foundation print, like something had sat there for a very long time and then simply left. I didn't tell her what I thought it had been doing while it sat there. The last ranger's story happened near Gregory Bald in October. He was asleep in a hammock when something above him, 20 feet up in the canopy, put a finger to its lips. The sound woke me before I understood what I was hearing. Thick and abrasive, like coarse sandpaper dragged slowly across bark. A wet friction sound, deliberate and patient, coming from directly overhead. I lay in my hammock and didn't move. The kind of stillness that isn't a choice so much as what your body does when something older than reason takes over. It was mid-October, Gregory Bald. The leaves had mostly dropped by then, which opened the canopy up considerably. Good sight lines, the other rangers always said. Good visibility. I've thought about that phrase a lot since that night. I tilted my head back and looked up. The moon was full and sitting high, and it lit the canopy in flat silver. The branch above my hammock, a thick horizontal limb maybe 20 feet up, had something on it. It looked like a man. That's the framework my brain reached for first, and I want to be honest about that, because it's important that you understand it was not a man. It was shaped approximately like one. A torso, 4 limbs, a head. But the proportions were wrong in a way that took a moment to fully register. The arms and legs were too long. The kind of long that looked structurally impossible, like the bones had been substituted for something that didn't follow the same rules. The skin was hairless and a chalky, unhealthy white that the moonlight made worse. It was clinging to the branch, completely upside down, and its head was rotated, not tilted, rotated. A full, 180 degrees, face pointing straight down at me, while its body faced the sky. Its eyes caught the moonlight, the way a deer's do, that flat, reflective glare. But the color was wrong. Dull yellow, like old bone. It knew I was awake. I don't know how I know that, but I do. There was no ambiguity in the moment, no wondering if it had noticed me. It had been watching me long enough that my waking up was simply the next expected thing. It reached out one hand, slowly, with an awful, mocking deliberateness, and extended one long finger toward its lips. Then it moved. Up the trunk, impossibly fast, limbs working in a way that no primate has any business moving, fluid and wrong, like watching film played backwards. It cleared the canopy in under 3 seconds and was gone. I did not sleep. I did not move. I lay in that hammock in the October cold with my eyes open until the sky turned grey and the birds started, and even then I waited another 20 minutes before I trusted the silence enough to climb out. I packed in 11 minutes. I know because I timed it. 2 days later, I handed in my badge. I wrote personal reasons on the form and didn't elaborate. My supervisor called twice and I let it go to voicemail. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what that gesture meant. The finger over the lips. The shh. Whether it was telling me to be quiet so I wouldn't wake something worse. Whether it was telling me it didn't want me to scream. Or whether it had simply learned that gesture from watching us, the way it watched me sleep, and understood nothing about it, except that humans use it before they take something. I don't go into the woods anymore. I don't own anything that would make it easy. Some places in the Appalachians have been wild long enough to develop their own rules, and the most important one seems to be this. If something up in the canopy already knows your face, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is make sure it never sees you again. So next time you take a little family vacation to the Smoky Mountains and you think about wandering off the paved trail to get a cool picture for Instagram, just remember, you're entering their house, and some of the things out there don't want you to leave. If these stories gave you the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced something out in the woods you just couldn't explain. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.